Now, it is all over for lefty loony CNN anchor Jim Acosta, who has announced he is leaving the network. Have a listen.
It's never a good time to bow down to a tyrant. I've always believed it's the job of the press to hold power to account. I've always tried to do that here at CNN, and I plan on doing all of that in the future. One final message. Don't give in to the lies. Don't give in to the fear. Hold on to the truth and to hope.
Gosh, what a loser. Good riddance. And here is one of his best moments from the archives just last week.
This is not Fox, Congressman. You can't just spin a tail and pull the wool over people's eyes.
Yeah.
This is CNN. This is the news. We are asking you to come on and tell the truth.
And that's why more people are watching the Cartoon Network SpongeBob reruns right now, Jim.
And here he was being shut down by Donald Trump.
Since you're attacking us, can you give us a question? Mr. President-elect.
Go ahead.
Mr. President-elect, since you are attacking our news organization, can you give us a chance?
Your organization
You are attacking our news organization.
Your organization
Can you give us a chance to ask a question, sir?
Go ahead.
Sir, can you state, Mr. President-elect,
go ahead.
Can you state categorically,
She's asking a question. Don't
Mr.
be
President-elect, can you give us a question?
Don't be rude.
You're attacking us. Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude.
Can you give us a question?
I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Bye-bye, Jim. Bhatia, is the fake news finally petering out?
It's so amazing watching that clip now, because at the time, of course, the atmosphere in the country was very different. The media had a lot more power and a lot more of a lock on how information was distributed. And we know that when it comes to the mainstream liberal media, actually the mainstream media overall in America, about 96% of journalists are Democrats, are liberals, are progressives. They're from the left. And so they had this lock on the dissemination of information, and they were constantly portraying Donald Trump as a white supremacist and a white nationalist and a racist and a totally evil, completely dastardly character, and many Americans believed it. And now what's ended up happening is 10 years later, 8 years later, you have really a big difference in how Donald Trump is perceived. Millions and millions of Americans realized that they were being lied to by the mainstream media, that Donald Trump actually had their best interests at heart and actually agreed with them on the vast majority of the issues, so much so that he was able to run this unity consensus campaign and flood to victory through, winning the popular vote. So that whole situation of how Trump was lied about so successfully in the first time around, and then he ended up being the proof of concept of how evil the media is, how much they lie, how big the gap is between where the media is and where the American people are, to where people just stopped paying attention and stopped listening and voted for the man that they thought would have their best interests at heart, and just circumvented the media altogether. Now, I think what we're going to see here is CNN is clearly trying to regroup. And what they're trying to do now is get back to the center, is to reflect the truth rather than the Democrats' party line, the way that they've been doing for the last 10, 20 years. And it'll be very interesting to see if they succeed in doing so. One thing is certain, Danica, is these people are completely feckless and craven. They don't have an original thought in their head. The mainstream media in America, they're herd animals. And so they just follow each other. So I think the fact that CNN is getting rid of some of this very left-leaning pro-Democrat talent signals that there is going to be a shift as the media tries to become profitable again. I do think it's a little too late for them.
Yeah, I completely agree. Too little, too late, for sure. Now, dozens of top former intelligence officials are urging members of the Senate to confirm Donald Trump's nominee for Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. It comes as she faces scrutiny from some senators who've been quite critical of her intelligence expertise. Bhatia, why is she under a lot of pressure here? Because I note that she's a military officer, she's got more than 20 years of service and multiple combat deployments. Do you think that she will get this role?
It's going to be tight. And the reason for that is because Tulsi Gabbard represents a threat to the worst parts of the entrenched deep state. Tulsi Gabbard is a woman who has said that her core belief when it comes to foreign policy is when it comes to fighting terrorism, she is a hawk. And when it comes to counterproductive wars of regime change, she is a dove. This is the America First foreign policy. And of course, the Forever Wars crew, which runs very deep in the deep state, absolutely hate this idea that there would be wars that are none of our business, that we should absolutely not be engaged in, or on the flip side, that we should have a zero tolerance policy for terrorism. They like it the opposite. They love to negotiate with terrorists, and they love to get involved in all sorts of, wars that have nothing to do with us and turn people who are not our enemies into our enemies. The other thing that Tulsi Gabbard has been very vocal about is FISA warrants. Amazingly, she doesn't believe that the government should be spying on United States citizens. Well, this is a step too far for many of our elected officials. And honestly, her best asset may be the thing that ultimately sinks her in this race. I really hope she gets confirmed. She's a brilliant woman, a patriot, a hero, a veteran. I mean, what could you want more? She's great looking. I mean, she's like everybody else in Donald Trump's cabinet, brings so much to the table. And the very things that are her greatest strengths are the reasons that they don't want to confirm her.
Yeah, and also she clearly loves America. It's just extraordinary that this has been delayed so much. Now, let's talk about the situation in the Middle East. Naama Levy, one of the 4 female IDF soldiers released from Hamas captivity at the weekend, has spoken for the first time, saying, after 477 days, I'm finally home. I'm safe and protected, surrounded by family and friends, and feel better every day. During the first 50 days since October 7, I was most of the time alone. After that, I was captive with my fellow observers and citizens who gave me strength and hope. We held each other strong until the day of release and after it. But yeah, one can't even imagine what she and the other hostages have gone through. And I think it's a reminder, this is not over. There are still hostages being held captive, and we still don't know how many are alive or dead.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank God these girls are starting to come home. I think it was extremely important to get them home. Honestly, when the enemy has your women, I don't think there is too high a price to get them back. I know most Israelis don't feel that way. They feel very worried about the terrorists who are being released from prison. I was speaking to somebody who was very close with a judge in the West Bank who put a lot of these guys in prison, and to see them coming out, it's very difficult to see. But honestly, Israel needs to figure out how to police these terrorists and how to protect its citizens. Getting those hostages out is unbelievably important. And I don't think anyone has to worry that Donald Trump is going to allow Israel to end up in a worse situation than before he assumed office. We've never had a president who is so pro-Israel. I think that he's playing the long game. I think he has his sights set on normalization with the Saudis. And I think that that's the lens through which Donald Trump is proceeding here. He wants peace in the Middle East. He wants an economic normalization deal with the Saudis for America, and he wants one for Israel. And that is going to take some really creative thinking about how to rescue not just the hostages, but the citizens of Gaza from the Hamas terrorists and barbarians who oppress them as much as they do the Israelis.
No, you're spot on, absolutely. And it was interesting, Batia, because President Trump has actually invited the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to visit the White House next week and become the first foreign leader hosted by the president. Batia, how significant is this? The Israeli Prime Minister, I've got to say, has all but been abandoned by Western allies at a critical time of need. Why do you think that Trump is taking the time to get him now over to the United States?
I think he is buttering him up to make a very difficult ask, maybe something about Palestinian statehood. Trump has a lot of leverage when it comes to Israel because he has been such a friend of Israel. And there are things he wants in return, things that may be difficult for Bibi Netanyahu to give him. And I think that's a great thing. I mean, sometimes your friends need you to give you the tough love. And there's nobody on this planet who can give Israel that like Donald Trump can. I think he's thinking really big. His first term, he got the Abraham Accords done, which if that hadn't happened, God forbid, I cannot even imagine what the last 2 years would have been like for Israel. There's no way they could have waged the war that they just did against Hamas if they did not have the backing, implicit albeit, from the moderate Sunni Gulf states. And so you really have a different Middle East forming here, very much under the guidance of Donald Trump. And I'm very interested to see what he has planned next.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be interested to see if that meeting goes ahead. Now, before we let you go, I've got to ask you about the transgender issue in the military. 6 trans members are now suing Donald Trump over that executive order banning trans people from serving. Trump, of course, signed the order claiming transgender people's sexuality conflicts with a soldier's commitment to an honourable, truthful and disciplined lifestyle. Barty, I've got to say, I don't think that Trump will do anything, nor would he be worried about these 6 personnel suing him.
Yeah, I don't think so either. The thing that your viewers have to understand is that what Trump is doing is dividing the LGB from the TQIA plus whatever. Trump is unbelievably pro-gay. In fact, he has just appointed the highest ranking out proud gay person in American history, Scott Bessent, to the Secretary of Treasury. Scott is married to his husband. They have beautiful children that they're raising in a beautiful home. Trump is very pro-gay, but he does not believe that the trans agenda should be something that is seen as on a par with the gay agenda. I think he very much sees the transgender issue in a very different way. Many people, I think, today are starting to see transgenderism as something akin to a mental illness rather than akin to being gay. And I think that the position that the administration is taking is that there are 2 genders. That is the view of the United States right now under this government. And that there is a difference between saying, we believe that every person should be treated with dignity and protected from discrimination, and saying that we endorse this as a worldview that we think should be spreading.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. But look, good on him, as we said, Bhatia, that he's taken control from the beginning. Bhatia Ungar-Sargon, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. Thanks so much for your time this evening.
Thank you so much, Danica. God bless.